What's up everyone, my name is Josh and this is Josh Unboxed, and welcome back to the Daily Grind, a video series in which I talk about particular cards, plays, strategy, news, and how it affects the overall sports card markets. In other words, I'm just trying to find a way to help us navigate through the craziness that is the sports card world of today, as well as to make much more sound purchasing and selling decisions. And today I finally want to tackle on the topic of those PSA price increases. Now, the whole reason why I waited in terms of talking about this topic is because everyone was already talking about it. I just wanted to kind of let the information sink in and kind of decide what I'm gonna do with this, or what's my play, what's my angle on these PSA price increases. Plus, I kind of wanted to hear all the content creators that I've listened to, get an idea of what's going on to their thought process, and also read the comments of the viewers, because it's pretty interesting hearing what people are saying. So it kind of helps me get a much more broader perspective of what might happen during this time of uncertainty, so to speak. I'm not going to go through the prices and how much they've increased, because you can go to any other video and see that, because so many people are talking about it. But what I do want to talk about is who I feel are impacted by this, what happens next, and where do I go from here in terms of my strategy going forward. In terms of who's impacted, the people I feel that are impacted the most are the people that follow the whole buy raw, grade, and flip model. Remember this, a year and a half ago, a whole bunch of people jumped into the sports card market, and rightfully so, because a lot of people started seeing how much money can be made out of sports cards. In particular, getting your cards graded by PSA and selling them off as a PSA 10. That's why we saw all these base cards increase. That's why we saw all these base rookie cards increase. Just look at the pop report of 2018 Prism, 2019 Prism on the basketball side, and you can see where a lot of people jumped in and what a lot of people were doing. And rightfully so, because you're able to make a lot of money off of that. Now, already with the long turnaround times at PSA, it's impacted these people just a bit. But with these price increases now, it's impacting people a lot now, especially, like I said, people who follow that whole model. And I followed that model too, and in particular I did it so that way I can generate profit to be able to buy into bigger cards. That's how I'm able to acquire such expensive cards, by being able to follow that model. Some people do it just to make money. So whichever way you fall, it does impact you if you're on that side or if you follow that model. However, from the collector standpoint, if you're grading cards just to collect and put into your PC, it barely impacts you. The only thing that you're impacted by is just the cost to get it graded. If the whole purpose of the card is to just sit in your PC, then there's really no problem waiting a year for that card, because once you get it back, you're just putting it into your PC. The only difference is how much you're paying for it. That's the difference between from the collector mindset to the investor flipper mindset, because when people look towards investing, short-term investing, right, and flipping, this really impacts that side a lot. But if you're a collector or a person who's going to hold long-term, then it impacts you minimal. So that's where the two differences in terms of who gets impacted and who doesn't, because there was already an inherent risk or an associated risk with these long wait times, because you don't know what can happen with these players. They can get injured, they can become irrelevant, or worse yet, the sports market could crash during that year you're waiting for your cards to come back. There's a lot of risk associated with that, and a lot of people are not willing to take that risk now, especially with the recent price increases at PSA. Now, where do we go from here? I've heard a lot of content creators talk about this being an opportunity for any of those second tier grading companies, whether it's BGS, SGC, CSG, GMA, HGA, for them to take over this base and speculative market and take it by the horns and push it forward, to provide an alternative for people to get those cards graded from those companies. Now, there are certain factors that will really determine whether people are going to jump towards that route, and the biggest one will be turnaround times, right? If this second company is able to meet the turnaround times despite having a huge shift in demand, then yes, it may be worth it to send it to these grading companies. The second part of it is, what will the value be of these slabs when they go on to the second-hand market? Now, will there be a perceived value increase in demand for these cards that are graded HGA, that are graded SGC, that are graded BGS? Who knows, right? The consumer will determine what the demand will be. The market will determine what the demand will be with with those particular slabs. Now, we've seen a situation similar to this back in the summer when COVID happened and PSA and BJs were closed for a brief moment and SGC was still operating. A lot of people, a lot of content creators were talking about SGC and pushing their cards towards SGC, and that in turn caused a lot of other people to send their cards to SGC. And what happened? They got flooded with submissions and they weren't able to keep up with their guaranteed turnaround times, and that really impacted the value of their cards. So what once had potential to be a strong candidate ended up fizzling out, and now it sits where they're at right now, where you can still find value in SGC graded slabs. Currently, I hear a lot of people talking about HGA, HGA this, HGA that. I've seen videos of people doing HGA reveals. Slabs look nice, you can match the color of the slab with the color of the team or the color of the card, which is a cool concept, AI grading, and a lot of people are talking about it, trying to generate interest in HGA. And like I said, the market will determine, and as more and more videos come out and as you see more and more content being made on HGA, I wouldn't be surprised if the demand increases on that. Now, the thing with HGA is that they're only taking a certain amount of submissions per week. Now, if that increases or not is yet to be determined. I think what they're trying to do is stay true to their turnaround times. They know they're new, and I think turnaround times is very, very important to them. It'll be interesting to see what happens going forward, but I do suspect a lot of more people are going to show HGA submissions, HGA reveals. I'm willing to try them out once. I was talking to my coworker today and he was like, do you want to try out HGA once? And I said, sure, why not? I mean, it's worth a shot, right? But yeah, it'll be interesting to see if these secondary companies are able to grab that brass ring and take a hold of this base and speculative market, and if these cards' perceived values will increase on the secondhand market. Now, the question I ask myself is, what do I do from here? How does this impact my thought process on the whole grading aspect of the sports card market? Now, I could tell you one thing. The one part that I don't think it'll really impact is the whole vintage card space. The supply out there raw that have the potential to be high grades is very, very, very minimal. I feel that with vintage cards, their population won't grow exponentially. They only grow slowly over time as people find cards of value or find cards that are worthy of being graded and submitting them off to PSA. And that's the part of it, is like these people are being very selective as to which cards they're going to submit to PSA, especially on the vintage card side, to be able to maximize that profit or to get a card that's graded well. And that's one of the strategies that I'm going to employ. I mean, I have to be very, very selective as to which cards I'm going to send in, especially if I'm dealing with like 90s cards or cards from the 80s and older. That's one area that I'm going to try to focus on. But the one area where I do think the prices of PSA graded cards will impact is with the ultra modern cards. I'm talking about anything from now going forward, especially for breakers and people who rip wax or people who join group breaks. The idea of ripping open wax, pulling a bunch of rookie cards that have potential to grade PSA 10, sending them value through a value submission and waiting a bit for it to come back, that model is severely impacted. What I'm thinking I may be seeing is that for any cards going forward, we might see more cards enter the market raw with the potential to be graded as a PSA 10. And because of that, the allure for me of buying raw and holding on to those cards until they deem worthy of being submitted, right? It's not about the quick flip when I think about these current ultra modern cards now. It's going to be more geared towards holds. Then I might consider sending those cards off to grading, because by that time things may have settled down. Now, with anything pre-2019, I'm still going to look at those graded cards as, kind of like a short-term hold to be able to generate profit to buy into the vintage cards. Because if you think about it, just look at the population of 2018 and 2019 Prism on the basketball side. You see insane pop reports. So most likely the raw cards that you see on the secondary market have been picked clean already. So the chances of getting a PSA 10 or PSA 9 probably pretty slim on those cards. So I'm still going to see value in the PSA 10s. But when we go towards, like I said, towards anything being released this year going forward, I think those cards will be impacted the most in terms of people trying to price those cards up a little bit higher as a PSA 10. One, because they're going to start saying low pop on their listings. So people who want that graded PSA 10 card without having to take on the risk of submitting it at a high price point are most likely going to pay that PSA 10 price. To me, I think there's value. There may be some value in raw cards going forward. That's just my thought on the whole situation. If you guys enjoyed this video, go ahead and give it a thumbs up. If you haven't yet, please consider subscribing. You know, I like doing these videos on a daily basis. And for those of you guys who have watched my videos, I really do truly thank you from the bottom of my heart for watching and subscribing. And with that being said, my name is Josh, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Later.